This idea is this enough? Is this all I'm capable of? Is this my potential? And am I okay with that? And I was like, life looks fine, but what could it be?
What's up, guys, and welcome back to Life by the Horns. Today, I'm sitting in Dustin's chair, and we're talking about something deeply personal to him. 8 months ago, Dustin stopped drinking. But this isn't an episode about whether alcohol is good or bad. And we're definitely not here to tell anybody else whether they should drink. I'm interested in a bit different question. What was the drink doing for him? Because we drink for dozens of reasons, whether it's celebration, connection, confidence, stress, boredom, sleep, escape. And sometimes we drink simply because we enjoy it. And sometimes without realizing it, we start asking alcohol to perform a job. Quiet my mind, change how I feel, help me belong, help me relax. Let me stop thinking for a while. And if that's true, taking away the drink doesn't take away the thing that we're using it for. It just leaves you alone with it. And that's what I really want to understand today. Not just why Dustin stopped drinking, but what happened when he did, what showed up, what got harder, what got better, and maybe most importantly, who Dustin had to become when the drink wasn't there anymore. So brother, 9 months, let's go all the way back before sobriety. And, before we talk about why you quit, let's talk about more, what was your relationship with alcohol, and not necessarily like how much you drank, not whether somebody else would call it a problem, but what role did it actually play in your life?
Well, I can address that too. So I drank on days that ended in Y, and I would tell people like, oh, I only have 2 to 3 drinks a day, which sounds very reasonable. What people didn't know is those were cocktail glasses that were just, straight vodka or tequila in most cases. And each one of those was about 6 shots. So you do the math. It was a healthy dose every day. So I would definitely say it was extremely habitual and a problem. So that was the first part. What was the second question? What was it doing for me?
Yeah. What role did it play in your life?
Man, it was honestly everything. It was such a part of my identity and who I was. When I celebrated, I drank. When I had a bad day, I drank. When I just wanted to listen to music and kind of, numb out from everything, I drank. If we were going out to dinner, I drank. If we were going to the beach, I drank. Like the only time I wasn't drinking was work and sleep and at the gym. So it was just massively a part of me, and it being an amplifier, because of all the things that it does to your body physiologically. And then, even from a nervous system perspective, man, without it, because my body was just not used to creating serotonin and whatnot on its own. Without it for the longest period of time, you just feel numb. And so whether that be when I, quit for a period of time, it takes your brain a long time to start doing that on its own again. And then when I wasn't drinking, everything just felt mute.
Like that best friend that was with you everywhere.
That toxic best friend. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about younger Dustin, what did alcohol give him that he didn't feel like he had without it? Like, what the confidence, belonging, fun, escape, permission to loosen up? What did it allow you to become or stop being for a few hours?
So it was all of that. So my parents split up when I was around 12. My dad was in his late 60s, early 70s at the time. And I was the oldest of the kids. And I just knew that, man, I had to step up and help out. And so as a young guy, I had a lot of responsibility. I didn't mind it. But all my other friends just seemed to have, for lack of a better term, so much more fun. And a neighbor friend of mine, one night I'm at his house. He was older than me. He drank all the time. He looked like he was having fun. So I was just like, hell, we'll give it a shot. Literally. And I did. And it just seemed like the timidness and lack of confidence and everything just kind of stripped away. And I just kind of let it all go. And it was a very addictive feeling. And then so, one night of having my first drink and puking my brains out and, rolling into the next weekend, it was just kind of like, man, I want to try that again. And then it just became this very habitual thing. And that's where it really just kind of became my identity. Like I enjoyed the self-confidence that came from it. I enjoyed the relief, at least, that it felt like, man, I don't have to worry about all this stuff around me right now. I can just have fun.
And what's interesting about your story is life wasn't actually falling apart for you, right? You had a business, leading people, raising a family, functioning, like you're succeeding, right? So if alcohol wasn't necessarily destroying your life, why did you feel like you needed to remove it from your life? Like, and also here's the other side to that question is like, how dangerous is it when you're still successful and that's like evidence that something isn't really costing you anything?
So for years, man, I remember telling my business partner that, when I felt partly cloudy, which was basically every day, me at 70% was still better than most people at 100. So it was a very easy justification. And then I would very easy to sit here and say I was a functioning alcoholic. Like I could get things done. And so for the longest time, it was just like, man, this is me. Life looks pretty good. It's not that bad. However, every time things were going terribly wrong in life, that seemed to be the common denominator. And a friend of mine told me something that somebody shared with him one time, which was, it's not that every time I drink something bad happens. It's every time something bad happens, I've been drinking. And I looked at like my worst financial decisions, the biggest, fights my wife and I had been in, anytime I'd been arrested, like all of that, the common denominator was Dustin was drinking. And, in my head, I could do the math because I'm a very logical person. I'm like, well, 99% of the time, nothing bad happens. But then I just finally got to a place and it was like, man, is this it? Like, am I going to just continue to drink every day? Am I going to continue to numb out? Is this the one thing I have to have a good time? And on the outside, like we all see the fucking Instagram and social media shit all the time. And even, I shared this with Adrian on our team. Like I did not listen to our podcast. I was not doing a lot of personal content last year because I just felt like a fucking phony. I could come on here and talk about what needs to be done and how to move life forward in the right direction. But I was hungover while I was saying it. I was too embarrassed to listen to my own bullshit later on when this stuff would actually air. And I was like, is this who I really want to be? And I heard this saying one time, which was, what a man could be, he must become. And that sounds like a heavy weight, right? But if you think about stories in the Bible and whatnot, David was given Goliath. If we truly are to live this amazing, prosperous life, like there's going to be challenges, but I was choosing to put one in my life consistently. It wasn't that God threw Goliath in my life. There's many things I've had to overcome, but I was choosing this bullshit every day. And I was self-selecting just a lesser version of myself. And then, when I finally saw, because, what's so interesting about parenthood is we're really good at telling our kids what to do. However, it doesn't matter what we say. A lot of times they model our behavior. And I remember my oldest, his first day coming home from working in the jail. So he's military and he's also a sheriff's deputy. He's got a 6-pack. I say, how was your day? He opens a beer and he just chugs it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's me. This is what I have taught him. Have a tough day, you drink. Hang out with your friends, you drink. And I was like, man, this is just shit. So, and I said, all things look good on Instagram. Yeah, I was really good at posting pictures of the family on vacation. What I didn't post was the pictures of me and my wife getting in a fight and, me standing outside in the driveway at a cabin in the woods at midnight, pissed off, like, man, is this really the life that I want to live? Again, it's just the glamour shots. So it was just a very, hard realization with myself. Cause again, it looked okay on the outside. But on the inside, I was crumbling. And when I say, that alcohol was like that toxic best friend, when it feels terrible, man, you can drink to self-soothe, but also then you have too much of it. And it's the thing that created the problem in the first place.
It's like, on the outside, everybody's like, man, you've got it made. Everything's good. And they think that's your life. But, on the inside, that alcohol is destroying you, because we tend to think something has to destroy everything on the outside first before we're allowed to even question our relationship with it. And, maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it. Maybe our question is like, is this still serving the life that I want? You know?
Yeah, and I think rock bottom definitely has a place. It can be an amazing catalyst for a great life afterwards. But there's also this other opportunity or thing that most people don't sit with, which is this idea is this enough? Is this all I'm capable of? Is this my potential? And am I okay with that? And I was like, life looks fine, but what could it be? And I didn't want to get to the end of my life, or heaven forbid, life get cut, at least in my terms, way too short with my family from cirrhosis or something like that, or a freaking car accident, or, I mean, who knows, man? And be sitting there thinking, man, would it have been so much different and better for them and myself without this?
And there's another layer to this that doesn't start with you. I know you mentioned your father drank, right? So you grew up seeing that, what alcohol could look like inside of a family, just like you mentioned your son seeing your son. So did you ever have like a realization that some of the things you swore you'd never repeat were starting to show up in you? And maybe was there a moment that you thought, well, this particular thing needs to stop with me? What did that look like?
Man, and here's the irony in all that. So my father didn't drink for the first 12 years, at least, that I was around. But he did share with me, as a young boy, these, funny stories about him when he did drink earlier in life. And I didn't put two and two together. I didn't realize there was a problem. So my parents get divorced. I'm 13. I'm working at this little Italian restaurant. I cash my check at a liquor store every week. And I just remember my dad being so sad and so lonely. And I asked one of the waitresses, I said, hey, when I cash my check, could you buy my dad a bottle of Glenlivet scotch? And she's like in her 50s. And she had to have been thinking like, okay, there's no 13-year-old that's drinking scotch. And so she was like, yeah, sure. Because I was like, I want to get it, for him as a gift. My mom and dad just got divorced. So she buys him this scotch. My dad picks me up from work and I give it to him. And he's like, what the hell is this? I'm like, well, Dad, you always shared all these stories with me about drinking with your friends and Glenlivet scotch. And so I figured you would like some since you seem so sad. Little did I know, I was probably a large part of the reason why my dad then went down that rabbit hole for about the next 5 or 6 years. But what's so interesting is up until that point, my dad was, he was born in 1934 in the middle of the Great Depression. So my dad was old and he was the authoritarian. He was the one, if we did something wrong, we got our ass whooped. And so I knew my dad provided and protected, and then he spanked our ass if we were out of line. When he started drinking, he was actually more fun. And so, young, impressionable guy, it's like, oh, this equals that. So in part of my own story, when I started, 3 years or 2 years after the fact, I very much felt and thought the same thing. And then, 5, 6 years in, my dad decides he's going to stop for lots of reasons. Guy pulled a gun on somebody at the bank, got in a hit and run. He was constantly drinking and driving. And I would be like, Dad, you can't do this. And he's like, what are they going to do? Arrest an old man? I'm like, yes, that's exactly what they'll do. Or we'd go to the beach as kids, and by like 10:30 in the morning, he was done for the day. And I'd be like, Dad, why don't you come to the pool? Why don't you go to the beach? He's like, oh, I'm so dehydrated. I'm like, because you've been drinking since 5 a.m. And so I saw the negative, but what I also saw was, man, Dad was more interesting, more fun, told different stories. So, when I look at that, I think a lot of that just continued through my life. And it wasn't so much that I learned a lesson from him that I wanted to necessarily stop with me, other than this idea of, I don't want my kids to think that alcohol is the solution to everything. I don't want them to think this is what you do when you go to dinner. I don't want them to think this is what you do every day after work. I don't want them to think that, every vacation, we got to figure out where the closest liquor store is and what time it opens. Because, heaven forbid you wake up on a Sunday and you've run out. And that's what was showing up in their life.
Has getting sober changed the way you understand your dad?
Yeah, he wasn't a bad guy. I just think he was dealt a bad hand. When you're that age and you've got, a 2, 7, and 12-year-old that you're all of a sudden raising by yourself, and no real friends, no family, he was just lonely. And so, what did he grasp onto? That's what he did. And, is it the right thing to do? No. but that was the vice that he leaned into. I think it's just it's a consistent reminder that, man, doing life alone and in isolation, that's just not what it's all about and where it's at.
And it's important to understand. And I know a lot of times people, and you mentioned this, it wasn't really a situation where you're like, I'm not going to become that, right? But I think it's important. Sometimes it's not about that anyway. It's more about understanding why the problem existed in the first place. Yeah. And shifting though, that this might be one of the more important questions today is if alcohol was doing something for you. Removing alcohol didn't remove the reason you wanted it, right? Like your stress was still there, your mind's still there, the bad days still there, pressure still there. So when you finally took away that off switch that you had, what showed up for you? Yeah, I remember that.
No, I mean because this is the natural progression for most people, right? It's like, man, I stop doing the one thing and then I go to the next, and and here's the irony in all this too. Like, I love health and fitness, and yet I was constantly doing something that was sabotaging my efforts there. And so as I started taking gummies, and I'm doing research on them, I'm like, oh, this actually isn't good for my sleep. No wonder I feel groggy and all this kind of shit even after a solid 8 hours. And finally I just had to sit with myself, Jarvis, and say, is life really this shitty where I have to numb it all the time? Because who wants to build a life where that is the case? And ultimately, well, in large, you are in control of that. And so I finally said, what would have to be different? Well, I'd have to change my relationship with this. And right now, this just doesn't need to be a part of my life. And so, that was one conscious decision. And the next was, I truly have to start sitting with these emotions and these things that come up with me and get curious and understand them. Because they're not necessarily, the emotions and what I'm feeling is real. But it's just my interpretation of an event that happened. And then I can choose, what behavior I want to follow. And when you're drinking, man, because it's an amplifier, generally the behavior is not great. Now, being 100%, stone cold sober, it's like, okay, man, whether it be a high or low or anything in between, like, man, how does this make me feel? And then, I've got a decision to make. Do I want to respond differently? And that's just been one of the biggest things for me, is just actually being able to sit with things, both the really good, where I used to leverage alcohol to celebrate it, or the really bad, where I used to use alcohol to kind of drown it out.
Yeah, 100%. And so what do you think is harder, like stopping the drinking or becoming the person who no longer needs the alcohol to regulate themselves?
Stopping sucks in the immediate, especially if, we're drinking as much as I was. I didn't have withdrawals like some of my friends and folks that I know have stopped did. But I can tell you, when it came to muscle tremors, not even being able to really hold down water without feeling like you're going to throw up, zero appetite, sleep is terrible for days. Like, you just can't go to sleep. And that's tough. And so, what's the one thing that's going to quote unquote fix all that? Another drink. So you just have to white knuckle your way through it. And it sucks. But once you, at least for me, once you're a couple of days in, then all of a sudden it really is the becoming that is very challenging. Because every little thing is a reminder of what you used to do. And for me, one of the things that I would do is I would do 75 hard when life was getting really shitty, more so as punishment. And, it would be the fall and I'm out doing my cardio, and man, I'd look to my right and somebody's having a tailgate party at their house watching college football, and everything in me just wanted to go have a drink. And that's like tough. Everything in me was like, if I get in the car and I go to the liquor store, I know my wife's not going to give me some shit. My friends really won't say too much about it. I'll be fine. But it was living with myself. And so as the seasons have progressed through this, going through this moving down to Florida, I remember coming down here, we found the house, everything worked out really well. I'd refinanced my truck the same day. We had a bunch of wins. We're at this nice, house down here that we were vacationing at, and the Airbnb left a bottle of wine. Man, everything in me wanted to have some wine. And I was just like, no, we've got to learn to celebrate differently. And I remember waking up the next day, my wife had like 1 or 2 glasses of wine. She didn't sleep as well. She was pissed off about it. And I was like, well, you never asked me how I felt. And she just like gives me this look. I'm like, I feel great. But bigger than how I actually felt was that I was just proud of myself for making a different decision.
So I want to challenge you a little bit because I know you're Mr. Obsessive, high performing person. So you stop drinking, right? And that's awesome. But the other side of that is now you can work more, right? You can train harder. You can eat differently. You can chase another goal. You can always become obsessed with this idea of self-improvement. And you even talked about also on the other side, like you also went to gummies, you went to something else. But specifically when you leave drinking, you start kind of obsessing over other things, self-improvement. All of those things look healthier from the outside. But how do you know that you haven't simply moved from moved the coping mechanism to somewhere more socially acceptable? And how do you distinguish the growth between a more sophisticated form of avoidance?
Man, I love this question because if you get in a room full of alcoholics or former drug users, most of them are bodybuilders, tattooed from head to toe, have 3 businesses, an amazingly beautiful wife, an awesome family, like everything looks great, right? But it's a very binary life. Like the whole idea is, if this is bad, then this must equal good. And it's like, well, this isn't necessarily bad. It's just the overabundance that made it bad. Same thing happens on the other end. When you start to go this other direction, and I think it's funny you say something that is socially acceptable. As bad as alcohol is for us, it is so fucking socially acceptable. It's ridiculous. And it's so sad that once you stop drinking and people are used to you drinking, when you're not drinking together, they say, what is wrong with you? Are you going through something? Are you okay? And it's like, yeah, I'm great. And you make them feel weird and they try to make you feel, and the whole thing's just ridiculous in my opinion. But 100%, anytime I ever tried to stop before, it was completely, man, balls to the wall in the other direction. This time around, man, I just said, you know what? For the first time in my life, I really want to get to know myself. And so what that really turned into, because I used to have a ridiculous obsession with the gym and production and everything that is supposedly good. And I finally just said, you know what? I've got to be able to not go to the gym for a day and be okay with that internally. The gym is not me, period. My production and what I do every day, I can't let that all of a sudden define, am I successful? Am I qualified? Am I good enough? And I even went down, because I mean, not everyone knows this story, but I've had body dysmorphia and I've been a bulimic. I've been a roid raging, gym bro. I've been everything in between. And like, man, I used to eat pasta back in the day and I would just talk shit to myself for the next day about what a fat ass I was. And I can't believe I did this. And this has been a season of my life where I'm like, man, again, nothing is necessarily bad. Nothing is overly good. It's the interpretation of meaning we put behind it. And what's so interesting is like my body doesn't react adversely anymore to some of these foods that I used to say were so terrible. Which some people might be going, well, that sounds like some woo-woo shit. No, our mind is hugely in control of so much of our body that when we put undue stress onto ourselves, man, there will be a byproduct. And so, at this point, I'm like, man, I needed to learn to give myself a little bit of grace. Like even over the weekend, I love the weekends because I can go to the gym for as long as I want. This last weekend, I was so fucking sore. I was like, maybe because I am getting older, I just need to rest and recover a little bit more. And I didn't give myself shit for that. What I used to do would be go 2 or 3 times a day on the weekend. And bury myself because more is better, right? No. And so this has really just been a season of trying to get to know myself.
Well, that's where for me, like it stops being like an alcohol conversation, because everybody has that thing that you reach for to kind of change, right? You're trying to change your internal state, right? You're doing something on the outside so that you don't have to really stick with it and understand it, right? So when you remove yours, you eventually have to meet the person underneath it, and you have to sit with that. And, for you, alcohol wasn't something you drank. It was ingrained into your life. You had Friday nights, dinner, concerts, vacations, celebrations, network, all of it. And so when you take that away, did it feel like you were giving up alcohol, or did it feel like you had to meet a version of Dustin that you didn't completely know yet? So the big question here for you is like, who is sober Dustin? Who is that?
Yeah. I mean, at first it felt like I was giving up alcohol. It felt like you were, divorcing, somebody, something that's just been such a part of your life. And I think that's challenging for people. And just to create some clarity, like I know we're talking about alcohol, but we've also just talked about this idea of sitting with yourself. Some people may listen to this and be like, oh, I don't have a drinking problem. Fantastic. And I'm very happy for you. But I guarantee you it's something. It's this idea of trying to keep up with the Joneses, or it's that you're addicted to pornography or a sex addict, or, it could be drugs. It could be shopping. It could be going to the gym. It could be doom scrolling. And the reality with all these things is you've got to be able to sit with and understand yourself. And all of that stuff creates a distraction from you being able to be bored for a minute and just fucking feel how you're feeling. And for so many people, that is a foreign place.
Tell me this, man, as a youth, you've become sober. Who have you become better at being? And not like, okay, obviously focus is better, your workouts are better, but like as a husband, as a father, a friend, like what's Amanda experiencing? What's what are the kids experiencing, the team? Like what from your perspective, like what's become better?
Well, man, first I would say that I have become a lot more aligned with what fills me up and tears me down. I think for the longest time, I was also using alcohol as something that would allow me to mask in certain situations. Like if you've got that friend or family member that you've got to drink to hang around them, that's probably a tell. And so I've eliminated those relationships from my life. What has my wife experienced? Safety, because man, you want to talk about emotional intelligence going out the window, have those 2 to 3 drinks every night, which again, do the math, was 12 to 18 drinks. That's a lot. And, something as simple as like, the laundry being folded in baskets and not put away. Well, if that sat around for 2 days, and in my mind, I'd be like, oh, what is she doing? And then I would say something snarky or sarcastic. And then what do you think would happen after that? And that's just one minor example. So what does she feel? Safety, because I'm not lashing out irrationally. I don't do things that I don't have a loss of control with things at this point. I mean, and I made, kind of a joke about, financial decisions. I've bought 6-figure vehicles while being drunk before. That will not make your wife feel safe. She would be like, are you sure this is a good idea? I'm like, don't worry, babe, I got it. And then, the next week I'm like, what the fuck was I thinking? Well, I wasn't thinking. And then, have to live, through that. So, and those are just some minor things, but safety being one. How do my kids feel? Probably very much the same, but also more connected. And that is with my wife, that is with my kids, because they finally get to experience me. Not a masked version of me, not a volatile version of me, a way more stable version of me that again knows myself, which sometimes that means I don't say yes to every single thing that they want to do. But I'm not saying it from a place of extreme selfishness, that I'm hungover or any of that. And I watched a video, and this was early on, and most would say, man, you're still super early on in sobriety. I hear you, my friend. But I watched a video like 3 or 4 months in, and it was this guy, and it was like, what it's like being a child with an alcoholic parent. And the little boy comes up to his dad, and his dad's hungover, sleeping on the couch. And he's like, Dad, can we go to the park? And he's like, yeah, buddy. And he's like rubbing his eyes. He gets up, he goes to brush his teeth, and he takes a shot. And if you're a drinker and you see that, you're like, and the reason you get that inner like angst and turmoil or tension is because you're like, yeah, I know what he's feeling, and it sucks. So he goes to the park with his kid. They finally come home. Dad's dragging ass. The kid goes, Daddy, can we make something for dinner? And he goes, yeah, buddy, just put something in the microwave. I'll be right back. Kid goes and climbs up on his little step stool, puts some like chicken nuggets in the microwave. Dad goes and crushes some beers and passes out. And the kid goes to get his dad, and he's like, hey, daddy. Dad doesn't wake up. And the kid just leaves his food, goes and gets his tablet, goes in his room and pulls his blanket over his head. And bro, that fucking broke me. Because I'm like, man, how many times on vacation or whatever it was that me? And I just didn't want my kids to experience that anymore. And then, as far as the team and like everybody else, man, I'd say it's a lot similar to what I said about my wife and my kids, safety. I was very emotional before. And not that I'm not emotional now. I was very volatile with my emotions before. So one thing could happen in the evening, which is an email from a client that said, "Oh, I don't think this is working well." And because it interrupted my alcohol sanctuary of peace, so I thought, bro, I would just lose my shit and send some nasty fucking email to the team. And hell, we may fire somebody the next day. And now we're changing all of our processes about how we handle things. Like, and that's just not, bro, that's not a good, safe environment for people. Or heaven forbid somebody would challenge me online. When I was deep into some drinks, man, I'd bring out the damn B-2 bombers and just obliterate them and make them look like a fucking idiot. And then I'd go back and I'd be like, hey, oh man, yeah, look what I did and blah. You made that person feel so stupid. And not only did they feel it, anybody that read those comments also felt it. And it's like, who is this arrogant motherfucker? And so, just to sum it all up, man, I think that so much more stability and safety for everybody, for them to actually truly experience me and truly be themselves.
Real talk. Most marketing problems aren't marketing problems. They're business problems wearing a marketing hat. Cute, but very expensive. Maybe you're getting traffic, but it's not converting. Maybe you're converting, but your average sale is too low. Maybe things are fine, but not scaling. That's usually a system issue, not a need a new ad issue. So here's the move. Let's hop on a short call, look at your business, and see what's really holding your growth back. No pressure, no pitch, just a fit check. If we can help, we'll tell you how. If we can't, we'll tell you that too. Tap learn more and grab a time.
One thing I've noticed with you in particular, at least once a week, I will hear you say something pissed you off. Like, I haven't heard you say that you're pissed off in a very long time. And even now it's interesting because even when you start to say it, you'll switch and you'll say, well, I wasn't really pissed off. It was just a little frustrating. You know what I mean? Like, it's interesting that, like, yeah, you're definitely not as, like, up and down. Like, you're very, like, it's not that you're chill, because, I mean, you still have, you know what I mean? Like, you're still passionate, and I love that. But there's, like, you're not, like, angry and pissed off about something. Like, you'd go off the, like you said, you'd go off the deep end on a social media comment. I'd be like, bro, but yeah, it's really cool to see. But tell me this, like, on the other side, right? Like, this is the thing that a lot of people leave out. What's been harder, like, as you've been sober over the last, like, is there something that you miss or just think it's fun? Like, talk a little bit.
So when you talk about, like, identity and these kind of things, or just, this idea of decades worth of behavior, when you flip that switch, you still have a lot of those memories. And so, like, even moving down here to Florida, as much as I love this place, when we lived here last time, I drank the entire time, man. Whether it was golfing, fishing, going to the beach, it was just drinking. And so that was something before we made the move, because I was, 4 or 5 months in at this point, I was really struggling with internally, because I was like, well, I wasn't going to go to the office and see you every day, Jarvis, so you wouldn't necessarily know. And, no one's checking in on me. So there's a lot of opportunity to be really functional and go back to that place. And so, that's one thing. The other, I drive by a beach bar on Friday night, and it's like, oh man, that looks like a lot of fun. Or family comes over for the 4th of July, what do? They drink. And so, you just start to look back at all these rituals that you had, and that's kind of dying, or it's changing. And that can be tough. And then you feel like an outsider, because it's almost like, man, I'm not taking part in these things that we all used to do together. And I kind of miss that sometimes. So there had to be some shifts. So for me, I've always been a foodie. So, when these times come up, I'm like, well, I love when I drive by the bar and I'm like, man, that looks good. That looks fun. And I think about it for like 15 seconds and I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm like, hell, the reason I had to drink to go to the bar is because the noise, the annoying people, it's not nearly as fun as we think it is. Or, other things that have changed. Concerts are not very fun for me at this point. I'm like, the quality, the audio quality sucks compared to what I can hear online. You're not as good of a singer as I thought. I don't want to sit in lower Alabama when it's 95 degrees and humid as hell around a bunch of drunk people and go piss in porta potties. Like, and we did that for Father's Day. And I just remember my wife, like, she was so excited to get these tickets and take me to this concert with our son. And we get there, we went out to dinner, and then we went and sat in the parking lot. And, you know, we had an hour before the concert. What do? You pregame. We didn't do anything. We just sat there, you know, and played on our phones and talked. And then we finally walked in and, you know, everyone's getting fucking hammered. And I got Gatorade and water for us. And I should have got way more. We were done with all of our beverages before freaking, you know, the main act even came on. We're sweating so bad. My son looks at my wife and he's like, Mom, I have sweat going down my butt. And she goes, me too, baby. And we have this on video. It's hilarious. So, you know, and I'm laughing. And then, you know, the main act comes on, Zach Top. And I'm like, you know, this is really cool. And also we're fucking miserable. So I was like, guys, do you want to leave early? And my wife's like, no, I mean, I want you to hear your favorite songs. I'm like, sweetheart, I have a record player in my office and I can listen to them whenever I want. So we took our son on the Ferris wheel. We got him some ice cream. We left early. So we missed all the, you know, drunk people driving home in the traffic. And we kind of got home and I was like, I really appreciate this, but I don't necessarily want to go to a concert ever again. Because it's just not, I mean, maybe indoor, but not outdoor. But so there's been a ton of things, man, that you just start looking at differently. But then I have to ask the second question, which is, did I really enjoy that event or that thing? Or did I drink to have to enjoy it? Because it's actually miserable. And then, yeah, most of it was fucking miserable. And the drinking just kind of took the edge off.
That's what makes it a bit honest, though. You know, like sobriety doesn't just magically make your life easier. In some ways, it makes it more real, right? And you have to face with a lot of the things that you avoided. Let's talk. I know people say this, like, or ask this, like, are you ever going to drink again? But I'm wondering if that's even the right question. Do you need to make some, like, massive declaration about forever, or has 9 months of being sober changed the question from could I have a drink to, like, what would alcohol actually add to my life now?
I think that last part is probably the most important. Because I have really wrestled with this idea of could I have a drink again? And I've justified it. Like, I could, I feel like I'm in control, all of that. I also think that's the devil doing a great job because I've had these conversations before with myself and then I've seen the byproduct of it. The bigger thing is, what does it add? And then when I look at all the situations, which was, you know, every day that ended in Y and almost everything I did in my life, I'm like, what did it add? It really didn't add anything. I mean, it really didn't. Or I'd get to the end of 75 hard and I'd be looking great. And then I'd go eat a cheeseburger and then drink. And then I'd wake up the next day and feel partly cloudy. And then why did I do this? And I think that tension right there is the most interesting thing to me. And it's, we all have so much potential and we all do things to self-sabotage it. And it's that internal dialogue, which I think is more powerful than how, you know, what the world thinks and everything else. And so when you look at, and I don't know their stories, but when you look at the Brad Pitts of the world and the Conor McGregors, and they've decided to do this, you know, ever so recently, man, the next thing that I think is, man, what's going on in their world and in their life where they think that is the solution? Because if anything, it might numb it for a minute, but it doesn't make anything better. And that's when I think back to my father. It was like, man, yeah, do we have some great memories when he was drinking? But all he was really doing was just numbing the pain and the pressure and the isolation and depression and all these things. And from my own experience, when you're feeling a lot of those not great emotions, it doesn't actually make them better. It makes them worse. And so will I ever drink again? I don't know. But I do know that it damn near is, it's not going to be something that controls me. It's not going to be a part of my identity. I'm not going to be known as Dustin, the guy that when he goes out, you know, with everyone is going to get shit-faced and drink everyone under the table. And it doesn't add anything to my life. If anything, it just subtracts.
So now my favorite part, rapid fire, man. I've got questions for you. And so I've got 5. And obviously, you know, this is Life by the Horns, all bull, no bullshit. So don't give me the podcast answer. Give me the first honest one, right? So 9 months sober in one word. What you got?
Clear.
What's harder, refusing the first drink or dealing with the reason you wanted it?
Dealing with the reason you wanted it.
What's something you were convinced was better with alcohol that you now know it wasn't?
I hate to say it, but all of life.
What's one thing Amanda and the kids have gained from sober Dustin?
Stability and peace.
And last one, finish this. I thought alcohol gave me blank, but what I actually needed was blank.
I thought it gave me peace, but what I actually needed was clarity.
Good. So last one, Dustin, let's remove every external consequence. I put your favorite drink in front of you right now. No hangover tomorrow. It doesn't affect your sleep. Your health doesn't change. Amanda doesn't care. Your kids will never know. Nobody judges you. Nobody on this podcast ever finds out. There's absolutely no external consequence. What would you actually be hoping that drink gives you? And do you still need it to give you that?
I don't think there's any hope there that it gives me anything. I mean, I know that it won't. I mean, you do any research on it or even look at the fucking label on the bottle, like we all know it's bad for us. But I think when you remove, I mean, if we potentially look at alcohol as like food, I mean, we all eat tons of bad shit that we know is not great for us either. But one thing that food and drink can do for people is create community. I mean, you always remember that time, like you had that, we just talked about this morning, like, dishes that our mom and grandmother made that were so amazing. And those create lasting memories for people. I would say in the right celebratory, opportunity, man, and there is a big win and, everybody wants to have a drink together. Most of my friends, that's not their thing. So I don't see that being a thing. But if that came up and it was like, man, let's have a glass of champagne to celebrate, I don't believe I'm going to be in a place at that point where I'm like, oh God, if I have this glass of champagne, I'm going to need 3 bottles. So, to me, it's more of a symbol than anything. And I don't see it giving me anything. If anything, it just is a part of that community and that maybe that celebratory moment. And that's it. It's nothing beyond that. And prior to this, though, that thing would have been everything.
9 months in doesn't mean Dustin has figured everything out. It doesn't make him an expert on sobriety. And this isn't him telling anybody else that their relationship with alcohol should look a certain way. It's just his story and where his story is today. 9 months without the drink, 9 months without the off switch, 9 months learning healthier ways to sit with the things he used to quiet, and maybe 9 months of becoming more comfortable being fully present in his own life. So, bro, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, I am proud of you. If you don't hear it, I need you to know that I'm proud of you. And I just appreciate you trusting me and us enough to tell your story. Like always, guys, this is Life by the Horns. Till the next time. Peace.